It says still 2 minutes too, though, Kathleen, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so wait till noon and a little after. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Let's Do Lunch Duluth event. We appreciate you joining us. I'm Karen Strummy, Chair of the Chamber Board of Directors. I hope you all are well and looking forward to the day when we can gather in person again for this event. Our sponsor today, Wheeler Associates, has supported this series for the past 12 years. Speaking on behalf of their organization is a past board chair of the Chamber, Patrick Heffernan. Pat serves as a financial advisor at Wheeler Associates since 2003. He is a certified employee benefits specialist in long-term care. Pat is passionate about our community. He is heavily involved in many organizations and a graduate of Leadership Minnesota and Leadership Duluth. He was recognized by the Duluth News Tribune in 2010 as one of its top 20 under 40 business leaders in Duluth. Pat, it's an honor to introduce you today. Thank you for your service to the Chamber, our community, and thank you to Wheeler Associates for sponsoring today.
Thank you, Karen. Very kind of you. Appreciate that. We are so lucky to have you at the helm of the Chamber here with your leadership. You've been an incredible leader in our community, so thank you for your service, and as well to the rest of the board as we navigate these challenging times. But we're doing it together as a community, and we appreciate the board leading that and the Chamber and their efforts to get us through this. And we will be back together soon, and we are a community that stays together. So we look forward to that. And as well, I just wanted to mention congratulations to David Ross on the announcement of your retirement and all of your leadership for so many years. You've been a tremendous asset to our community, so greatly appreciated. And we look forward to your next chapter and hope that you continue to contribute in different ways to the community, and I'm sure that you will. Thank you again for your leadership. Very quickly, Wheeler Associates, we are tremendously proud sponsors of Let's Do Lunch for many years, 12 years. I love this series, look forward to us being together, but in the meantime, it is great to have this venue and have this conversation. Quickly, Wheeler Associates, we've been around since 1934, founded by Hugh Wheeler. We do employee benefits, retirement plans, and financial planning. We look to form partnerships with business owners who put a great value on their employees and their team. That is very important to us. And as well, we do financial planning with people looking to form a partnership and a plan for themselves and their family. And so we look to do that and have great pride in doing that in our community for many years. It's our tremendous joy today to have Sara from the YMCA. We are tremendous fans of the YMCA and Sara, and we support the Y many ways, including one of the best days of the year for our team. We do a day of service down at the YMCA Camp Miller, which is just a tremendous joy to help them, but we have a real fun time doing it. So thrilled to have the opportunity, especially today, to be a part of this with Sara. Again, great to be here. Hope to see everyone soon, and I think I will turn it over to David at this point.
Thank you, Pat. Very gracious. And you and your colleagues there continue to be a driving force, a positive force for the Chamber and for our community. So thank you. And Karen Strummy as well. What a delight it is to have you as our leader this year and it's been a treat to work with you. I distinctly recall the excitement that surrounded the hiring of Sara Cole as president and CEO of the Duluth Area Family YMCA. It was the autumn of 2017, 3.5 years ago. I knew of a few of the YMCA board members, and they shared with me their excitement for being able to attract to the Duluth Y a nationally recognized YMCA leader. And their enthusiasm has proved to be well-founded. At the time she committed to Duluth, Sara was the highly successful Senior Vice President of Program Development and Innovation at the YMCA of Greater Rochester, New York. And she was responsible for an innovative cradle to career pipeline of youth development for a multi-branch YMCA organization. The organization served 109,000 members and sustained a $47 million a year operating budget. She rose up through the Rochester YMCA for 8 years before joining us in our beloved Zenith City. Prior to her time at the Rochester YMCA, she worked for 3 years as a director of out-of-school time programs at the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati. She earned her college degree from Nazareth College, a private college located in Rochester, New York. She majored in English language and literature. It has been a pleasure to witness the energy and the focus and the people skills that she brings to our YMCA. Thankfully, the Chamber acted quickly upon her arrival and was able to attract Sara to serve on our board of directors. And she is a delight to work with. The YMCA, certainly the Chamber, and our community are better because of her. Please join me in welcoming one of Duluth's bold new leaders, Sara Cole. Sara, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, David. I am truly honored to be here. It's just a real treat for me. I can't explain what an honor it is. I want to thank Wheeler Associates so much as well. They are a group of some of my favorite folks, and the support of the Wheeler and Heffernan families is one that both I and the YMCA owe a debt of gratitude to. So wonderful to be there. So before I start, I have to tell a story about how I first met David Ross. I know everyone probably has a first time meeting David Ross story, but in the summer of 2017, I was a finalist for the CEO position here. And I was reaching out to learn a little bit more about the Y and the Duluth community. And I was doing that by sending short emails requesting a phone call. So I would send these emails to different community leaders, just asking if they would be willing to get on the phone with me for 15 minutes so that I could ask about the Y and ask about the community and learn a little bit more. So of course I sent an email to David and he wrote right back. And I don't even need to tell you that he wrote this really beautiful, poetic email about Duluth, and that of course made me immediately want to move here. And at the very end of this long email, he said that he would be sitting by his phone at 3 p.m. that day. And if it worked out and I could call him, that was wonderful. He'd be ready to talk. And if not, he wished me the best. So at this point in the story, folks usually say, well, what did you do? And I think it goes without saying that I called him at exactly 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we spoke, and the rest is history. So I will always remember that first email and that first phone call with David, and just to be grateful to him. I've been a friend and a fan since moving here, and he is a tremendous supporter of our YMCA. And so I just want to say thank you. And I've kept that email and will always keep it. It's one of my favorite stories about becoming a Duluthian. So with that, bonjour. It's great to see everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm just really, truly honored to be with all of you here today. I hope that all of you and your friends and your loved ones are safe and well. And I am so looking forward to getting to a place where we can get back together in person again. Before we start today, I want to acknowledge the ongoing violence that's being perpetrated on Black and Brown communities in our country. I know this is on folks' minds today, and it's on my mind. I'm sad, I'm angry today about the death of Daunte Wright and those who came before him, including George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many, many others. I stand and our YMCA stands with BIPOC communities and with all communities facing violence and subjugation. One of my favorite authors and activists, Audre Lorde, has a famous quote, "Your silence will not protect you." And I would add to that, that our silence doesn't protect anyone else either. We know by now that speaking and having the conversations exactly like the one we're having today are crucial to doing the work that's going to make our world a safe place for all folks. And on the days when I feel the most discouraged and the most overwhelmed, I find that this work is a solace to me. And I think that it will take all of us together to do this work, to continue to do this work, and to break the silence that still exists around racism in our country. But I'm grateful to have this conversation with all of you today. And I hope that you're all keeping your chins up out there, that you're supporting your friends and colleagues in the BIPOC community, and that we'll all keep working together to make the world a safe and just and equitable place for all people. So the topic of today's talk is a timely one, and that's creating a community for all. I can't think of a more important and yet more complex topic than this one. The mission of the Duluth Area Family YMCA is to put the principles of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility into place through programs and services that build healthy spirits, minds, and bodies for all. For all are my two favorite words in that statement. And they're the ones that drive me the most. And to be honest with you, they're the ones that keep me up at night because they're always on the horizon. They're always out there, just slightly out of reach. We're always striving and I think never quite getting there. There's always some distance that we have to cover in terms of really making spaces for all. And I think we have a choice about whether that feels invigorating to us or whether that feels overwhelming and leads us into stasis. And some days like this one, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like the distance to cover is so great. But I think we can find that deeply motivating. And like many of you, sitting here today, even the fact that I'm sitting here today is testament to the fact that there is the possibility for change. Our organization's more than 150 years old, and I'm so proud to be the first female president and CEO, but that wouldn't have been possible 150 years ago, or probably 50 years ago, maybe even 25 years ago. So we know that this change is possible, and it's invigorating to me to have these conversations and to work alongside all of you to continue to making a commitment to make that change. At the Y, we think of equity and inclusion as an inside job. And by that, I don't mean that community action is not tremendously important, but I believe that all of this work starts internally with each of us, thinking about ourselves and thinking about how we approach the world. So in that spirit, I'm going to start with a little bit about myself and then sort of move outward from there. So my Y story, excuse me, begins with these two crazy kids. These are my parents, circa 1973, Brad and Kathy Lewis. And they're both nurses, still practicing, and servant leaders who raised all of their 6 children to be what they would have called good people. And if that sounds vague to you, it definitely wasn't vague in our household. It was very clear what they meant when they said good people. And what they meant was that it was important to, for folks to vote and give blood and shovel the neighbor's driveway while we were out shoveling ours. It meant to them that we were thinking about other people. We were thinking about ourselves in community. We were sharing the things we had, especially when it became clear that the folks near us might not have as much. And it also meant that they wanted us to make a righteous noise when we realized that things were unfair or broken. So to this day, I'm still trying to make these two crazy kids proud and to live up to that servant leadership model that they gave to all of their family. I took swim lessons at my local Y growing up. And as you can see here, I had a very clear vision of what my future would be. I think I pretty much nailed it. So although things might have gone in a slightly different direction than I may have thought when I drew this picture, I began working in my working life, not as a ballerina, surprisingly, but as a professor of literature and feminist theory. And from early on, was doing a lot of work on my free time outside the university when I wasn't grading stacks of freshman composition papers. I was working and volunteering at community-based nonprofits. And at some point, it became very clear to me that that was where the real passion in my life lies. And I was lucky enough to leave the university and go work for a nonprofit in Dorchester, Massachusetts called Project Hope. And I was really lucky to go there and study and learn under the leadership of their then executive director, Sister Margaret Leonard. Now, Sister Margaret was 78 at the time that I came to work for her. And her claim to fame, one of many of her claim to fame, was that she knew how to hotwire cars. So our cars in that time would be stolen frequently. And if you went to Sister Margaret, as I did, in tears, she would simply say, get a screwdriver and a flashlight, and she would help you find your car and hotwire it and drive it home. But her real claim to fame was that she was so respected in the community because she'd spent her life working with and in the community to really become a part of the fabric of that community and think about what the community wanted and needed. The story of Project Hope was that Sister Margaret's order, the Little Sisters of the Assumption, around the turn of the century had found themselves living in a huge house in Dorchester and recognized that their neighbors were struggling with homelessness. So their idea was that they would simply open the house and invite folks to live alongside them in this space. And so Project Hope actually stands for House Open, People Enter. And they did. And many, many years later, during the time that I worked for Sister Margaret, her work was so respected in that community that when it came time for Project Hope to expand, the mayor of Boston gifted her the land that she would need to build a new space. And really, what I learned from Sister Margaret, in addition to the fact that she had no time for my nonsense, was that we could only do work with community and of community. There was no doing work for a community, that we would live in community and do work as part of that community if we were honored to be accepted into the community. So although I was probably her most naive and least useful staff member during those years, I owe her a debt of gratitude for really helping me fall in love with community service work and for teaching me a lot about what it means to show up and be in community. So from there, I became the world's worst bureaucrat working in the JJ system for the Department of Youth Services, and loved working with the youth, and to no one's surprise but mine, realized that I made a rotten bureaucrat. And right around that time, I saw an ad for a job in Cincinnati at the YMCA, and it was for the Community Services Division of the Y. So I had no idea that the Y really did anything but have gyms and pools. So it blew my mind that I saw this job that seemed like everything I loved. It was education work and anti-racism work. It was food access. It was thinking about innovative projects and services for community. And I just totally fell in love. So I sort of never looked back. I've been hooked ever since then. And I've just been really lucky to spend my time and my life in service to a great organization. Our Duluth Area Family YMCA started serving this community in 1870. And it didn't at that time have a building. The international YMCA movement is actually 175 years old. It began in London, England, when a 20-something guy named George Williams realized that some folks in his community needed services, language services and recreational services and religious services. And really, our Y started much the same way, through providing services for immigrant men at that time who were looking for housing and safe places to be together, and language services. So although we didn't have a building yet, in several years we would, and that work would grow and change into what it is today. And in the more than 150 years that this Y has been serving the community, things don't look exactly like they did in 1870, but many of the central tenets of service are just the same. So our national YMCA is large in scope and scale. You can see here over 800 separate associations in more than 10,000 communities. And we're very grateful to be one of those communities. And really, the cause of the YMCA is to build community, which I think is, again, this great North Star concept. And we do that through youth development, through healthy living, and through social responsibility. Locally, we've long since outgrown our name as the Duluth Area Family YMCA. And as you can see, we're serving, we have some membership-based branches here in Duluth, in Hermantown, and all the way up the shore in Grand Marais. We're also the proud owners and stewards of one of our nation's oldest overnight camps at Camp Miller, and provide some amazing community services in the Harbor Highlands neighborhood, in Gary, New Duluth, at Woodland. And we're lucky enough to serve 6 other YMCAs, both in Minnesota and across the country right now, including in South Dakota, through some shared services in finance, HR, and IT. And really exciting to be our newly named by our National Y, the regional hub for 8 states. We're that orange part up there, which makes us very proud. The only larger group here is run by Texas and a few other states. So big congratulations to Duluth for making it onto the map. And the excitement about this for me is not just scope and scale, but it's really what we can do with that scope and scale. So it's really at heart about our service to others and about the collective impact of the work that we do in the areas of equity, inclusion, 2 of the key tenets of both our local YMCA's commitment and our national YMCA's commitment. Because we know that this work begins inside not only ourselves, but inside our actual work culture. At RY, we work to articulate who we are and how we show up as members of a team to ourselves as well. And we do this in both large and small ways. We illustrate this through the use of a culture deck like this one with all new staff. But most importantly, we do this by showing up and living the values in our interactions with one another and with our community members and the members of our large partners in our larger community as well. The work of diversity, equity, and inclusion shows up in our annual operating plan. It shows up in every single employee's performance evaluation plans. And I think if this sounds soft in any way to you, I can assure you that these practices are best ethically, but they also enhance our bottom line as well. And as you can see, when we articulate who we are and what we do and why we do it, the work of equity and inclusion, of being good neighbors, and of continually striving to educate ourselves about how to create spaces and places that feel great for all people are always in the center and on the front line of what we're discussing. So you may also know our YMCA as having some gyms and pools, but we're a lot more, as I learned when I went to Cincinnati. We are a $9 billion international brand, and we're our nation's largest providers of childcare, of after-school services, and of summer camping services. Last year, locally at the Duluth Y, we provided almost 100,000 meals across the Northland. And we provide every day a variety of services and programs that we work to make accessible for all folks. We're one of the only organizations that I know of that never turns anyone away for inability to pay for any of our programs and services. And we're able to do that through the support of community members, including many of you. But perhaps I think most importantly, we're always striving to make the YMCA a place where folks can feel not only welcomed, but truly celebrated. And I want you to think about that for a second. I want you to think about the last time you went somewhere and you really felt truly celebrated. The last time you could go just as you are with no shame and no apology. I think that's a really rare and radical thing. And that's what we hope to create here at the YMCA. So RY, both locally and nationally, has a commitment to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this work is articulated in our local strategic plan, but also in our national YMCA strategic plan as well. This image that you see right now is sort of the central image that we use when we start to talk about dimensions of diversity or the different facets that each of us carry with us. It's an imperfect image, and probably a perfect image would be some sort of 3-dimensional holographic shape. But I love what it attempts. And what you can see is that you'll see a lot of different elements of diversity on here. I also love the fact that you see that this tool has some blank spaces. So it sort of acknowledges its own imperfection by leaving spaces for folks to come with elements of their own dimensions of diversity that might not be called out in this tool. It recognizes its own future failure as things evolve and leaves space for folks to be adding their own components, which I really think is beautiful. So this tool can help us visualize some of the many different dimensions of diversity held by us, by our staff members, by our members, by our community members, and it can help us to start to name and describe those dimensions of diversity as well. I love this slide. There's two slides in here that talk a lot about the wise beliefs. And I think this is so beautifully said, you know, that we believe that when we devote our full strength to this, we work together, we can address some of the most pressing issues of our time. Again, I think that's a real clarion call, something that is a great North Star aspirational vision. My favorite one on here is, we believe that in a diverse world, we are stronger when we are inclusive and our doors are open to all. And the punchline I usually say here is that means all people, not just people that I like or get along with, even my weird uncle. So this is the challenge of diversity and inclusion, right? To create spaces in a really fractured world where folks can come together who may believe different or even contradictory things. So I think that's, again, one of the delicious challenges of this work, is to really think and to try to create those spaces each and every day for folks who, again, may never collide in any other way, but come together here at the YMCA in those spaces. And I think, you know, this all seems so neatly stated on this slide. And as I was trying to sleep last night, I just kept thinking, I don't want to make this sound too easy, though. I think this is very smooth looking. But I don't want to give you the impression that the Y is an expert in this, or that I'm an expert in this. I think together we're all learners in this world. And in my experience, this work is really hard, it's really lonely, and it's sometimes heartbreaking. Most likely, this work is going to get you some angry reactions at times from your community, and maybe some angry emails as well. For those who want to tell us that this work isn't the work that we should be doing. And whenever I get one of those emails, I always have to stop and make sure that I'm articulate to the person sending it that not only is this the work we should be doing, it's the most important work that we're doing. That without this work of equity and inclusion, none of our other work makes sense. If folks don't feel safe and celebrated and welcomed, nothing else we do matters. And so I think it is not only work we should be doing, I think it's work we have to do. And I think it's the central work of our lives here at the YMCA, and I would say for all of us in our community. So I think, you know, it's work without which we can't do any other work, and it is really hard work. I think it often involves us admitting that our own histories and the histories of the organizations that we love have sometimes been places that have not been welcoming to all, and that haven't been equitable and just. It involves us pushing against the edges of our own incompetence, and that can feel awkward. It involves a lot of feeling awkward, and sometimes it involves apologizing when we get things wrong. I'm a Brene Brown fan, and she reminds us that our job here is not to be right, but to get it right. So one more time for the folks in the back, our job isn't to be right, our job is to get this right. And that means when we're corrected, when members of our community tell us we get it wrong, that we have to be brave enough to own that, to educate ourselves, to apologize, and to do better in the future. I have a great friend and scholar who said something very smart, which was that it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to beat ourselves up about the past and the mistakes we've made, but nor do we get to let ourselves off the hook for the future. I think that's really powerful. And I think that applies for all of us in all of our work together, from the micro to the macro, right? The work of equity and inclusion and diversity is as small as the color of the Band-Aids in our childcare centers and the types of families who are in the books on the shelves, to the macro of who's on our staff team, who's on our board, and the continual work of making sure that our policies and procedures match our humanity. And that's work that never ends, in my experience. And I think we can, when the answer is no, that those policies and procedures don't match our humanity, that we can be brave enough to change them and to continue doing that work. This is another one of my favorite slides. And I think it just reminds us we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do together. And I think that the folks among us who've had the most privilege have the most work to do. And I think that there's some impactful things we can do to further this work, all of us together, and to create communities in which equity and inclusion are a reality for all folks, and in which a community in which no one needs to live in fear. So here's a few things I think that we can do. We can educate ourselves. We can read books, we can listen to podcasts, we can seek answers and information. It's not the work of BIPOC communities or LGBTQ+ communities or communities of folks living in poverty or living with disabilities or Indigenous communities to educate us. It's our job to educate ourselves. And the great news is there's a lot of educational material out there in a lot of different forms. So this, I think, could be a really joyful exploration and one that we can take on. We can have crucial conversations like this one. I think we can have these conversations together as community leaders. We can have them with our teams. We can have them at our Thanksgiving tables. We can have them at our board tables. And we can keep having them even when our language is imperfect. We don't have to wait to have the perfect language to have these conversations. We can be brave and awkward. Again, that's another Brene Brown. Pushing against the edges of what we've always known and what we've always done is bound to be uncomfortable. But I think we can do this. We know over the last year that we can do hard things, that we can adapt to change, and that we can learn more quickly than we would have ever thought possible. So we can learn to operate in a space of awkwardness and discomfort, just as we've learned to work when we're tired or make dinner when it's the last thing we want to do. So I think that we all have the capability to do this and to keep doing it, even when it feels awkward and uncomfortable. And we can strive to be allies and co-conspirators to communities of color, to LGBTQ+ communities, to communities in poverty, to communities with disability. And we can remember that allyship is an active verb. It's something we do, and that we don't name ourselves as allies, right? That we're named as allies by communities when we perform that work. So we can think about performing allyship in a number of ways that's really powerful. And I think this makes a tremendous change. And I think we can remember as we think about our own leadership and interrogate our own leadership. I'm going to give another Audre Lorde quote. And she also said famously, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." And in this particular context, she was actually writing about white feminist academics who, in her mind, were silencing and pushing to the margins Black feminists. And her point, I've always taken that statement to mean the tools that we have that have built broken systems are not the tools that are going to dismantle those systems. And again, I think this can feel overwhelming or really hopeful. As leaders, each of us gets the opportunity to bring new tools, to discover new tools, and to think about the worlds we want to create within our organizations and together as a collective community. I think that we can continue to change the world by using new tools, by finding new tools, and by thinking about leadership in new and exciting ways. And to recognize always that it's not enough to just be in a space of power, but it's about how that we wield that power and whether we're consciously making spaces bigger for folks who maybe haven't had a seat in that too small house at that too small table. I'm going to end with a story of a really good day. So this is a photo of a really good day. I'm in there. You just can barely see me because I'm very short. But this was the first time at my previous Y that we ever went to Pride. So I fought for many years for us to get to go to Pride. And this was the first year that we were able to be out in our community showing our support during Pride. And it was a really joyful day for us. There were lots of folks lining the parade route, as there always are. And we saw folks we knew, we saw staff members, we saw some of our YMCA members. And after the parade was over, we were sort of standing around and taking some photos and just feeling great. And one of our members came up to us. He was 83 years old. And he just walked up to me and he said, "Nothing else but I've been waiting to see you here." And to this day, that really moves me because I wonder how many folks are waiting to see us in different spaces. How many folks in our communities are waiting to see us show up, to do the work of anti-racism, to do the anti-poverty work, to stand with communities of color, with Indigenous communities, with LGBTQ communities, and with other communities that have been silenced. How many folks are waiting? And how long have they been waiting? And how long will they wait before they get the message that we're not interested? How many kids out there are waiting to see us show up and tell them that they have nothing to be ashamed of, that they are welcomed and celebrated as they are? So, I think for all of us, it's a great reminder that folks are waiting, and it's truly powerful to see us show up in spaces that are welcoming and inclusive, and to push at the boundaries of the ways in which maybe spaces haven't been welcoming and inclusive before. So I'm grateful to be with you today. I'm so thankful for the time and for the ways in which you've welcomed me into your community. I am proud to be a Duluthian. And I think there's great work for all of us to do, and I look forward to doing it. So thank you for the time today, Miigwech, and I look forward to seeing you out there and to continuing some of these crucial conversations along with you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. What a delightful, informative, provocative, motivating message you have shared with us. It illustrates how much we all individually and as organizations have an opportunity to do better in these areas of equity and opportunity and inclusiveness. And what a wonderful messenger you are for the why, and for yourself, and for your history, and for your proud parents. That picture of 1973 looked very familiar to me. I graduated from high school in 1974, and it looks like it could be right out of my photo album. So your parents have much to celebrate in the person you have become and the leadership that you bring to the places that you are a part of. And we are so fortunate that that place right now is Duluth and the Duluth Area YMCA. So thank you so much. Delighted. Wonderful presentation. That ends our gathering today. And I look forward to the next time I see Sarah in person and can talk more about all that she shared with us. I encourage you to do the same as well when you stop at the Y or when you see her crossing the street. So thank you again. Thank you to Heffernan, to Pat Heffernan, and to Wheeler Associates, and to Karen Strummy. This concludes our program. Thank you for joining us and staying with us in this virtual format. There will be a time that we can gather again in person, but until then, your support is so important to the Chamber and to our community, so thank you. This ends our program. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon in this beautiful Zenith City. Have a great day.